Following the successful release of his previous novels, The Dream House and The White Room, internationally acclaimed playwright and author Craig Higginson brings us another one of his mind-blowing books. Described as a murder mystery with a hint of psychological thrill, Higginson's new novel, The Book of Gifts, opens us up to the precious but equally lethal gift of life. He further takes us into the complex perspectives of a family that's riddled with trying to discover the backstory behind a violent incident endured by their teenage boy. But then to discuss more on the cost of gift, as he details it in this offering, Craig joins us now via Skype. Craig, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you. Good morning. Lovely to be here.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure having you. Now, let's start with the title of the book as well as the cover. Take us through why, you decided on these and the significance behind them.
Yeah, so the Book of Gifts is really about gift giving and gift receiving. And it's sort of saying, what is the cost of giving a gift? Because when you give a gift, someone sort of becomes obligated. And what's the cost of receiving a gift? So it's sort of looking at the psychology of gift giving and receiving. And the action takes place within a family. There's this boy, Julian, and then his mom, his aunt, and his uncle. And every chapter in the book is given the title of the chapter is a gift that someone has given someone else inside the story for some sort of reason or some sort of gain. So there's a sort of a negative side to gift giving and receiving, and there's a positive side. I think we usually associate gifts with a positive thing, but there can also be people give gifts in compensation for different things, and if you sort of dig into the psychology of gift giving and receiving, it's quite complicated. There's a psychologist, Sigmund Freud, who wrote about this in the Dora case, this thing of giving over one forbidden thing in order to get another forbidden thing, called the unholy exchange. So that was the sort of trigger idea for it.
And in the beginning of the book, you start with a family trip to Umhlanga Rocks, and then a tragedy is thrown into the mix without giving away too much. Take us through what happened there.
Yeah, so when I first started writing the novel a couple of years ago, it started off with this boy who was in a coma in the ICU, and he had fallen off the chapel tower at school, or jumped or been pushed, and we didn't sort of know why. And so the book started then going backwards and looking at the life, from the points of view of the mother, the aunt, and the uncle. But when I sort of started writing that, I kind of thought, no one's going to want to read this book because it starts with this terrible event and then it goes backwards and these people are arguing and fighting, and who would want to read a book like that? Do you know what I mean? So when I picked it up again, I started in a very beautiful place at a hotel, a bit like the Oyster Box Hotel in Umhlanga Rocks. It's kind of made up, but it borrows from that very beautiful, very fancy hotel. And it starts where Julian is 11 years old and he's falling in love for the first time. It's this very beautiful memory and event, but then something happens there that triggers a whole lot of events that have later consequences. We're told by the Greek philosopher Aristotle that we judge character through action. So you're not a courageous person if you call yourself courageous. You're only courageous if you act courageously, and people can say, oh, he's a brave man because I saw him acting courageously. But if we don't know what's going on inside someone's head, if we don't know what their motives are, their motivations, good person, an evil person can perform an evil person can perform a good action for evil intentions. Do you know what I mean? Or a coward can do a courageous thing because by mistake. So the novel sort of goes backwards and tries to find the kind of cause of this dramatic event, and it's structured like a murder mystery in a way. So we want to know kind of who done it, who's responsible for this action, and of course it gets more and more complex.
Yeah, I see that toxic relationships, parenthood, identity crises, guilt, secrets are just some of the themes that I picked up on this book. Just take us through some of these themes and issues that you explore in this book and how they find expression in it.
My last couple of novels have been about race quite overtly, The Dream House and The White Room. And I wanted to write a South African novel that was very much about us, but that wasn't just about race, that was also looking at another area. And I decided to sort of hone in on the family and write a story that really could be set anywhere in a way. But I think one of the themes that is interesting in the novel is the sense that, the people in the suburbs, these quite affluent white people in these suburbs think that the threat is coming from elsewhere. And at one point, Emma just sort of goes mad when she thinks her son is going to die. And she runs off into the city and ends up in the middle of town and surrounded by these refugees who sort of speaking Swahili and stuff at her. And Shona, and actually trying to help her, but she can't understand what they're saying. And there's this sense throughout the novel that there's always this threat outside. It's something we can really relate to at the moment with the coronavirus, that there's this danger on the other side of our house wall and we're all sort of hiding. What's interesting, one of the interesting things in the novel is it shows that actually the threat is coming from inside the family, that actually when she goes out into the city, that's where people help her. She goes sort of into hell and finds hope, and actually it's in her own home, in her own life that she has to kind of examine levels of guilt or levels of complicity or whatever. So, yeah, I think that's a kind of interesting theme that sort of resonates with what we're going through at the moment, that we can also look to ourselves and our own behavior and how we are and who we are, rather than always looking elsewhere for blame and for a sense of danger and so on. And certainly at the moment, while we're all housebound, I think we do have a chance to help others by looking to ourselves and how we are at home in a way.
Now, this book is described as your most riveting and groundbreaking novel to date. I mean, what do you have to say about the kind of work that you've put in producing it?
Yeah, I mean, the content is, there's a sort of murder mystery, but the way it's structured, a lot of it goes backwards and then it goes forwards. So in terms of its form, it's much more experimental maybe than any of my other novels. And as a result, I thought it wasn't going to be that commercial. But I think it's a real page turner because you want to know what happened with this boy and what the actual story was and what the actual truth was. I was really surprised at how people just love reading it. I mean, they find it very compelling to read and difficult to put down. So yeah, that's an interesting lesson that sometimes if the more experimental we are and the more we're trying new things, the more we can actually satisfy people. Do you know what I mean? That we think that we've got to be conservative when we write or when we make something because we want to please people. But actually, if you just do what you want to do and what feels right for you, weirdly enough, that often pleases people more. They like what you've done more. So yeah, it's been interesting how it's been a really positive response. I mean, it's obviously a terrible time to bring a book out because no one's allowed to go to the shops and no one wants to go into a shopping mall, even if they're allowed to. But I mean, the book will be out for some months and hopefully in a couple of months we'll be able to start returning to normal life. And for those of you who are on Kindle, you can download it electronically as well.
Okay. It's an absolute masterpiece. I got to tell you that, Craig. Thank you so much for your time. Great chatting to you this morning.
Lovely to see you. Thanks so much.
All right. Now, joining us via Skype there was award-winning playwright and novelist Craig Higginson, and he's been speaking to us about his newly released fifth novel titled The Book of Gifts. It is 11 minutes before 8 o'clock.